Hey guys, it's Jackie with Intoxicating Arts. Today we're making chipboard letter backgrounds, and this is part of a new series that I'm starting called Use It Up, and that's where I look around my craft room and found something that I haven't used in a long time and try to just use all of it up. So to start off with this card, I found this jar of chipboard letters that I have had for years and years, and I figured, you know what, it's time to get this out of my craft room. I'm going to use all of these up and make some backgrounds. I also have these grunge letters and blocks from Tim Holtz Ideology, and I've had these for years as well. It has some letters and it has some blocks. I did not end up using all of the letters out of this, but I did fulfill my challenge of using up all of those chipboard letters in that jar. I also looked around and I found some other things that I can use to embellish these backgrounds, things that I haven't used in a long time. So I have these two Distress Crackle paints by Tim Holtz, and I've probably used these once, and I have them in brushed pewter and antique linen. I only ended up using the brushed pewter ones, so you'll see that later on in the video, but I've had these for years. I don't even know if they sell them anymore, actually. And then on top of that, I found some other things that I can use. Pretty much most of the stuff in my craft room I haven't used for years. So this is going to be pretty easy for me to do this series. I had those acrylic paint dabbers, this brand new apple barrel paint, and then I have this paint tester that I got from the paint section of Walmart, actually. It's like, it has dust on it because I've had it for so long, but it's meant to test out if you want to use the paint on your wall, but it has a little brush included, so it's really cool, and I ended up using that on two of my card panels. Then I'm just using regular sheets of cardstock. These are not thick at all, so they do end up warping a little bit, but my plan all along was to use a very strong adhesive when I put that on my card base. So, speaking of adhesive, I'm just using this really cheap school glue that I got on clearance. I've showed it in other videos. I got it at Target for like 88 cents. And I'm just scribbling some of that on, and then I'm going to use a popsicle stick just to kind of move that around and make sure it's on there a little bit even. I don't actually do this for all of my cards, but I did start off by doing that. So for this first one, background number 1, I'm calling it word search because I spell out some words and I use some of the same letters some of the time to make multiple words. And they're also not in any particular order. The only thing that they are is next to each other. So if you're paying attention, you can kind of see that it does spell out different words. So this first word I have on here is going to be laugh, and I'm using the L and the A from those big ones, and then the UGH from the Tim Holtz letters. Then I'm going to work off of that same L and spell out love going up diagonally. So this is just a really fun way to make a background, and it is a background after all. So it's not going to be the centerpiece of my card. I'm going to use it as background. So if someone's paying attention, they will see that it spells out all of these nice words. And at this point, it's really good to make this technique because we have the most possible amount of letters that we're going to have. So you're going to have a lot of different options here. I didn't plan anything out, so I didn't know what I was going to be spelling. I just got really lucky that I'm able to spell happy now, and then the last thing I'm going to say is hello. So these are all bright and cheery, happy words that we're going to be using, and I'll be able to use this on many different types of cards. So I also got very lucky where I was able to fit everything on here, and it ends up looking pretty good in the end. There was one that I actually had to trim down because it was not going to fit, and you'll see that here pretty soon. One of the L's I couldn't really fit in anywhere, so I just had to cut a little bit off the top of it, and it's able to fit right in there. So another thing about this is it kind of looks like it says help. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind, is like make sure that you don't have some weird words going on there. So that one is finished, and I can move on to background number 2, and this one is just an alphabet. It's super simple. It's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I actually ended up skipping the G and went straight to H, I, J, K, L, M, and It ends at the M. There is a little bit of a space where if I had a small N, I could have put that in there, but I just slid the M over and it ends up looking really cool in the end. So these are from left to right, but they're of varying sizes, so I get this really cool looking effect. It looks similar to a lot of those embossing folders that are out there, so you could probably even make this and then run it through your Big Shot and kind of use it as an embossing folder. I literally just thought about that right now. So that would be another cool thing to do. I already painted this so I could use it as a background, so obviously you'd want to do that before you get it all painted and everything. And to finish that off, I just moved that M over to fill in that empty space, and that one is done. So moving on to background number 3, this one is making a phrase of your choice, and for this one, I decided to spell out the word spring and then time. And originally I was going to just do the word spring, but as I was placing the letters down, I realized that I didn't like the way that it was going to look, doing it kind of like in a V shape. So I just slid everything over to the left side, and I have the smaller letters just kind of sticking out of the larger ones, and I'm alternating each letter from small to large. And when I did this, I didn't really plan it out. I just got kind of lucky that the phrase springtime fit on here. So you may want to actually plan ahead and just make sure that it will not only fit, but also fill out your panel nicely. And yeah, so this one just worked out. This is going to be great. I want to put like a die cut bunny on here, and I think it'll look really cute. I ended up coloring this one yellow, and you'll see that one in the end. So I think if you pay close enough attention, you can see that it does spell out springtime. So it's pretty cool for a background. My next one is going to be random letters. And I did this twice. So the first time that I did the random letters, I started off with full-size letters on the top. I lined them up, having them go directly, butted up next to each other, and I tried to make them as straight as possible. And the other thing that I did was cut off whatever was hanging over and continue that on to the next line. So these are random. I didn't want it to really spell out anything. You definitely could have it spell out something if you have enough letters left and you plan ahead enough. And in this case, again, it's just random. So one other thing that you want to consider when you're putting your letters down is whatever letter is going to be hanging off that you need to cut to continue on to the next line. Make sure it's an easy letter to do that with, like an O or a V like I did, and not something like an E or an F where you're going to have those little pieces that you need to glue on. It still is doable, it just will take a little bit more time and focus to do that. So I did the random letters a second time, but the thing that I did different this time is I started with half letters on the top instead of full-size letters. So doing it this way, I'm going to end up with half-size letters on the top and the bottom, and I just feel like this one looks a little bit more planned, probably because it was, and it just looks a little bit better by not, it doesn't look like cut off, you know what I mean? So I definitely like doing it this way more than having the full-size letters on the top. If you're going to do full-size letters, then I would make sure that they will also be full-size on the bottom. So just consider how big your panel is. And this time you'll see that I left everything hanging over and I end up cutting it off in the end. And I do use some of those pieces on another panel that I don't actually video because it is the same exact technique over again, but it's on a piece of cardboard. So the other thing I did different this time is individually glue the letters instead of putting glue all over the background. It really didn't make much of a difference. You can do it either way. Either way, your piece of paper or cardboard is going to warp a little, so I still will need to use a nice strong adhesive when I put this on my card base. So these are the pieces that I end up with. I had very little waste. I used almost all of my pieces, and I ended up with, I think it was 6 different card bases. So not bad. I have a lot to work with here, and I'll just show you really quick. You can see on the top of this one that's on the top of the pile, I will need to trim it down just a little bit because that C wasn't quite tall enough to make it all the way to the top. But this is the one that I didn't record, and then that was the last one that I recorded where you can see it's even. Then we have our alphabet one, and we have the word search one. That one came out really cool looking. And then we also have our phrase, springtime. And then we have the first random letter one, which is uneven. So the next thing I'm going to do is start decorating these and get them nice and colored up so we can put them as backgrounds. So I'm starting off with that yellow house paint sample that I showed earlier, and I'm just going to put a nice thick coat down on this one, and I do have to put 2 coats on this just because I did have some of the pink showing through still, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted a nice solid yellow panel. So basically just painting here, not a whole lot to see. And then I finished off the rest of them using some really old paint. So in the beginning of the video, I showed you that white acrylic paint dabber. The paint that was in there was so old that it was in like a ball, and I added water to it and shook it up. And then I used it, and it actually gave me this crackle effect when it dried. I didn't know that was going to happen, so it might be because it was over glue, and I know a lot of times when people want a crackle effect, they will do it over glue. But the other interesting thing is that the house paint did not give me that crackle effect. So something kind of interesting happened there, and I'm not mad about it at all. I can definitely work with that. I think it looks cool. So happy to work with the crackles here. So the next one that I'm doing to like actually decorate it, to kind of dress these up, because that was just the base coats that I put on all of them, I have my Dilutions paint in London Blue, and I'm using a baby wipe to apply this to my panel. And I'm just making sure to really rub this in well on the entire panel, and you're basically going to rub it in so that there's just a slight white line around each letter, and it gives it this really cool distressed look, and it kind of looks like you just painted on top of it, not really caring much. So the next thing that I did was take that distress crackle paint that I showed in the beginning of this video, and mine is really gloopy, and I'm not sure if that's because I've had it for so long and it's kind of dried up on me, or if that's how it came. But it did work. I was very heavy-handed with it. I did a really nice thick layer, and I ended up with some very nice thin crackles on top of those large crackles that I already had in the white paint. So this one came out cool. You can still kind of see the pink below because I didn't have a very thick coat of the white. But I'm just going to take that into consideration when I make the card. This next one is one of those white ones that I painted. I just sprayed some water on it, and then I'm going to use my Ken Oliver Color Burst in Phthalo Green and Ultramarine Blue, and just keep spraying some water on there to keep activating those watercolor powders. And then to finish it off, I'm going to spray it with some mica spray mist. That just gives it a really nice shimmer on the whole background, and I love how that one came out. I kind of wish that I did all of them like this because I just think it is really pretty, and I love the shimmer of it. So of course I had to dry that off with my heat tool to finish it off. So for my next one here, I have the yellow one, and I'm going to take my Distress Stain in Picket Fence. And my thought for this one was to kind of give it like a whitewash, because Distress Stains they're very thinned down, they're basically very thinned down paint, or kind of like a watery pigment. So
I figured I could do kind of a whitewash look on this, and I just was very light-handed. I made sure to be very careful to only get the white on the actual letters themselves and not anywhere on the rest of the background, and that one is done. That one was pretty simple. So this next one is Glimmer Glaze by Tattered Angels, and this is the only Glimmer Glaze I own. It's kind of weird, like I don't have any other Glimmer Glazes. I just have this one random one, and it's a weird thing to work with. It's basically a spray mist in a bottle with a tiny little brush. So I just kind of dumped it on my panel here, and then I used a baby wipe to kind of move it around, and just, yeah, I just used it that way, and it worked out pretty well. It's very sticky. It seems to have a lot of the resin binder in there, so it's kind of weird to work with. I won't be buying any more. I'm just trying to kind of use this up along with using up other things in my craft room that I don't use a lot. But it did give it some nice color, and it also put a little bit of shimmer on there, so that was nice. Alright, so for this last one, I'm going to bust out that apple barrel paint. So this is brand new paint. I've had it forever though, so it's just like, you know, sometimes you buy stuff and then it just sits in its original unopened package forever. And for this one, I'm doing a baby wipe, and I decided to kind of do a similar thing like I did on that first one, where I'm just kind of getting the paint everywhere, including the background, except for on this one, I'm more light-handed, and I'm trying to have my spaces where the original background color is coming through more. So that first one, I wanted to have really thin white lines coming through, and on this one, I want you to kind of see more of the yellow. So just another kind of distressed technique that I think looks kind of cool, and I definitely think it's good for a background. So there's some ideas of what you can do for these backgrounds. I just kind of wanted to throw some of my techniques out there, just kind of quick getting some color down, and I plan on turning these into cards soon. I hope that I have inspired you to get your chipboard letters out if you have some hanging around in your craft room, and just use it up. Just put it on a card, use it up, get rid of it, and have fun in the process. So thank you so much for watching, you guys. I will see you soon. Bye!